so excited to be here. Thank you all for coming. Thank you. Some of you have heard these stories before, so you know exactly like when to laugh and boo and all the things that you do. So you're my backup. This is Britt Wilson. I'll be telling more about her in a little bit. That's my daughter in the back waving. And I'm gonna start not by talking about my book, but by talking about another book that was the progenitor of my book, which is A Year in Provence. So has anybody here read A Year in Provence or Under the Tuscan Sun? Yes. Or yes, yeah. There was back in the 90s. There was this wave of books about moving someplace beautiful, buying an old house, meeting really quirky neighbors, learning the local culture, eating really good food, maybe falling in love. I loved every one of those books. I would just read them serially, one after another. People moved to Morocco, they moved to Mexico. I thought they were fantastic. And then after a while, there was a little part of me that started to get annoyed, because it was always that you had to move far away to find an amazing place to call home. And I found that irksome. I'm not gonna go stronger than that, but there was a little part of my brain that started to get a little bit, what's wrong with right here? That was my question. What's wrong with my own neighbors? What's wrong with my own old home? So that's what started out my practice of paying attention, my habit of walking out the door every morning and thinking, who can I bump into today? What kind of conversation can I get into today? What can I learn today about this place that I live in? And that's where this book came from, was just not moving 3,000 miles across the ocean, but walking out my own door and just paying attention to what was in front of me. So I'm going to be reading some selections from the book, and then Britt is going to be singing some songs based on those stories. So this first section comes from a chapter called Moving from New York. When I was in kindergarten, they had us draw pictures of what we wanted to be when we grew up. And I always drew myself sporting a really big mustache and holding a baguette. Because even as a 5-year-old, I knew that all artists were French men. They lived in Paris, they wore berets, and I expected that I would grow up to do all of that. But I never made it to Paris. I made it here instead because my husband Jan thought that it would be a good idea. And when he first suggested that we move to North Carolina, I responded like the New Yorker I was, which is, why on earth would anyone move there? Now Jan is a pretty mild guy, so he simply replied, maybe you should take a look. Back when I was living in New York and I asked people, what do you do? They would answer, I'm a publicist, or insurance. And when I lived in California, our friends were cooks or carpenters. But here in North Carolina, when I asked people what they did, they would say, well, I tell stories. Or, oh, in the summertime, I grow herbs. Or, I live in a teepee. Living in a teepee is not a job. It's way, way better than having a job. So I agreed to move here. There was a lot to learn about my new home. The first being that everyone was weirdly friendly. Back in the city, not making eye contact is the rule, and you certainly don't talk to strangers. But in Bynum, neighbors would stop in the middle of the road to talk while I hung my laundry out on the line. And old-timers would offer opinions on my haircut or my artwork. And one hot day, a fellow told me that he planned to go home, get naked, and read the Bible. Even driving down the road was neighborly, because I had to practice holding my steering wheel at the top so that I could return the waves other drivers gave me without raising my hand off the steering wheel. People here have practice. You know, it's North Carolina. You have to wave. We don't do that in New York.
Why not?
Well, I was baffled by this casual intimacy, this loss of anonymity, until one day when I was out in my garden weeding, and a neighbor, a newcomer like myself, she plopped down beside me and began to pull up chickweed. Now, her marriage was unraveling. Her husband was gone for days and then weeks at a time, and it was during one of these absences that we knelt with the weeds piling up beside us, and she explained to me the benefit of living in such a small town. She said, I was worried that I would feel ashamed in front of you, what with the sound of our shouting and all, but I don't really feel embarrassed. Everybody already knows what's going on, so I don't have to pretend to be fine. I don't have to explain why I don't feel like going out or why I'm crying, because you all already know. It's actually comforting. I can just feel how I'm feeling or act how I'm acting, and I know you won't hold it against me. She was right, of course. We didn't judge her. We all have our own problems, our oddities, and our rough spots, and we all have to live together. In a town this small, there can't really be an us and a them, because we don't have that luxury. We have Bible thumpers and alcoholics and tree huggers and rooster farmers and forensic toxicologists and illiterate old men. And the most amazing thing about this town, and the thing that I think makes it work, is that it can seem as if we have exactly one of each. And when you have only one lesbian couple in town and one pastry chef, they can't ignore one another. In the big city, artists can find other artists to spend their time with and avoid the Bible thumpers if they choose. And computer programmers can spend all their time with other computer programmers and never bump into a rooster breeder at all. But in this town, we are all that we've got. If you walk out your door, you're going to meet somebody different from yourself, and you're going to know their name and a lot more about them besides. You might not like them exactly, but it's hard to vilify the other or the odd when they've brought you groceries during an ice storm, or when you've helped start their stalled car, or when you've just had to give them a wave as they drive on by. Oh, this is Britt Wilson. I'll say more about you in a minute, actually. You just dive on in.
So I wrote these songs, I don't know, as a personal challenge. Emma's book had a lot of inspiration in it. I am a teacher. I don't write and play songs for a living. And I would take notes on these and then try and see what kind of words of Emma's I could steal to come up with something. So this song is called Your Business. I'm sure you've heard us going at it, scores, sledge doors, when we've had it. No, you watched us unravel over the crunch of stomp off gravel. So let's rock and talk and pull us a pile of weeds. Small town living don't afford much privacy. No, no. In fact, we're in the business, being in the business of everyone. Your business is my business, is our business, hun. So let's rock and talk and have us a glass of tea. Honey, skip past the part where you give me the backstory, 'cause I already know. don't have to explain it. Your love is there. I don't have to obtain it. A kind of grapevine can come in handy. The way our news flies, well, I guess it's dandy. So let's meet and eat and share us a casserole. Small town living is like medicine for the soul. We're in the business of being in the business of everyone. Your business is my business, is our business, hun. So let's meet and eat and share us a casserole. Small town living is how we all become whole. Near the privet, you told me something in private. In the middle of the road, we didn't think that it was going nowhere. By the end of the day, almost everybody knows your business, my business, our business, hun. Oh, we're in the business of being in the business of everyone. Your business is my business. Let's get some business done.
That's Brittany Wilson. She's so good. To have a friend who would write a song about every story in your book is mind-blowing. I know I met Brittany almost exactly 8 years ago in the driveway of the Bynum General Store because she was pregnant with her daughter and I had just had my daughter. And she walked up to me and said, "Will you be my friend?" And I had the great good taste to say, "Yes, I will." And look what happened. I'll tell you more about her in a bit, but I'm going to read another story. This is a story about a neighbor of mine who is no longer alive, sadly. His name is Roy Hatley. Some people go, yeah, people who know Bynum know. So the town of Bynum used to be a thriving place. There had been a cotton mill, a movie theater, a department store, a school, a hot dog stand. But by the time I moved there in 1996, only 2 businesses had managed to survive the closing of the cotton mill: the barber shop and the general store. Now, I've cut my own hair in the bathroom mirror, so I don't need a barber shop. But the general store was the town's hub. It was our post office, our social club, and our grocery store all rolled into one. You could buy hoop cheese, saltwater taffy, fishing lures, gardening gloves. There were moon pies, there were spark plugs, sometimes mustard, sometimes tea, always cream soda. Back then, the store was the headquarters of the old-timers. And the old-timers were a group of men who had lived in Bynum their entire lives. They had worked in the cotton mill, they had married one another's sisters, and since they had retired, they had total ownership of the store. They would sit around on a bunch of beaten-up chairs all day, every day, to pass the time. And anyone who stepped through those doors, especially a newcomer like me, they were setting themselves up for a thorough inspection. So the first time I approached the store, I was brand new in town. I didn't know anybody. I was this little Yankee from New York walking around Bynum, and I stepped through the red painted doors just in time to hear a gravelly voice say, Did I ever tell you about the time I almost beat the piss out of Santa Claus? I froze, my eyes fixed on this circle of old men gathered around a small table. The man who had spoken, more rotund and far scarier than any department store Santa, glanced at me, raised one fierce eyebrow, and said, "So I have this claw hammer in my hand, and I says to Sandy, I says, if you say he 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 one more time." I wanted to turn and ease back out the door, but whoever this guy was, 300 pounds, black hair greased back over a lumpy skull, tiny eyes glaring out at the world. He looked exactly like the kind of guy who would threaten Santa Claus with a hammer. He was sitting between me and my P.O. box. I wanted to get my mail. I might have a magazine. I might have a card. I might have a coupon from Bed Bath & Beyond. So I gave a nervous smile the way one does, and I prepared to slide past him. But the Santa beater turned, freezing me in place. "Hello, young lady." "Oh, hello. And how is this day treating you so far?" He was staring at me from under those eyebrows. "Well, pretty good, I guess." I looked around the circle. There were 7 or 8 unsmiling old men, hands clasped over their big bellies or curled around bottles of Coke. One fellow was turning a tin of chewing tobacco over and over in his hands. One was scowling at the pile of mail he was sorting. I started to sweat. "Well," said the ogre, "if there's anything I can do to make this day better for you, you just let me know." He patted the chair beside him. "Why don't you take a seat? My name's Roy. Come sit. Maybe you'll learn a thing or two." So I've sat. And that's how I came to meet Roy Hatley, old-timer, Santa beater, and the unofficial mayor of Bynum. Also, I later learned, the biggest liar in town. "I do believe that every old person in this town has some of my blood flowing in their veins," said Roy. "Used to be when they needed a blood donor up at the hospital, they would just call me. I got that kind of blood that anyone can take. They would just open me up and run a pipe from me to whoever needed the blood. You see that woman over there? She's got some of my blood. Oh, and that widow woman who lives up on the corner, she has some. Oh, and that little boy used to be around here. He got some, and this gentleman sitting right beside you, he's got some of my blood too." The gentleman beside me just gave a little shrug. And who knows what it was true when it came to these stories. But as I got to know Roy, it seemed more and more likely that he would give his blood to everyone in town, and less likely that he would threaten Santa Claus. Because he was the one who had noticed me, the newcomer, standing in the doorway of the general store that day. And he was the one who had offered me a seat and a story. Roy and the rest of the fellows around the table had grown up here and gone to school together. They had witnessed weddings and attended funerals, and over time the mill closed down, and the movie theater, and the school. Even the store was fading quietly around them. The only thing that remained stable was that circle of old men who had heard each other's stories 100 times before. It's understandable that a person might want to polish the truth, lie, add a claw hammer, whatever. So I sat and I listened, and I learned a thing or two. And that story about Roy's blood may or may not be true, but after living in Bynum for 25 years and listening to his stories, I do believe that I have a little bit of Roy's blood flowing in my veins now too. Yeah.
There goes the pick. / something my husband made me that's made out of like things you put underneath the legs of chairs, so I wasn't so
Oh,
loud.
I like that.
That's a clever husband.
Clever husband, very clever husband.
I didn't.
Okay, this song is called Same Stuff. Shook, you don't know me from Adam, and you overheard me say, wanna take a crack at him. That was old man banter. I'm not really gonna take a claw hammer to Santa. They look rough and they look tough, but we're made of the same stuff. They say I've got the kind of blood you can give to almost anyone. No, don't know all their names, but I'm straight up flowing in their veins. Give me a call when anyone falls under the weather. They look rough and they look tough. These are my brethren. Gonna pipe from you to me, and you will see we're made of the same stuff. We're made of the same stuff. They say I've got the kind of blood you can give to almost anyone. No, don't know all their names, but I'm straight up flowing in their veins. Give me a call when anyone falls under the weather. They look rough and they look tough. These are my brethren. Run up like from you to me, and you will see we're made of the same stuff. Same. We're made of the same. We're made of the same. Made of the same stuff. Shook, I know you don't know me from Adam. We're made of the same stuff.
It's so nice at the end of a song when everyone goes, It's so nice. It's the best.
I see where she was going with that.
Yeah. She's got a mailing list on that table over there. She's, like she said, she doesn't actually write songs for a living, but I think she writes some darn good songs, and maybe someday she'll put out an album, and maybe someday we'll get to find out about it on that mailing list. So. I didn't, well, I don't even know how to say this. I didn't mean to write a book. Maybe I did, I don't know, but this book in your hands started out in the world as letters that I would write to my friends, because I moved down here from New York, and my friends up there thought that I had gone crazy. And so I was trying to send these little glimpses of what was happening down here, why I thought they were crazy for staying in the city. And I don't know if these stories convinced any of them, but that was my intention, was just to share a little bit of what I was loving about this place. But what didn't always come through as love. Sometimes it came through as, well, itchiness, which is what this next letter's about. And so when you read the book, a lot of them, it follows a year, like a year in Provence, but it's a year in Bynum. So it follows a year of living in Bynum. So this next one starts out saying, I'm generally not a big fan of February. It's glum, it's gray, it's damp, you know. But there is one thing that this time of year has going for it. It's itch-free. Because around here, the things that can make you itch are as mighty a force of nature as hurricanes and ice storms. When I moved to Bynum, my husband told me that I had a choice. I could spend the warm months of the year inside, or I could get used to scratching. I thought he was joking until I took my first springtime walk in the woods. And as soon as the soil warms up and the leaves start to sprout, forget it. Now, poison ivy covers every surface. It creeps along the ground on skinny little stems. It towers overhead on hairy vines as thick as my arm, drapes over the paths. And when the first leaves emerge, they're tiny and dark red. And I have friends who search for these new leaves to eat. They claim that eating poison ivy makes a person immune to its itch. Chris Carter over here is nodding. Yeah. So, intrigued by the possibility of not having to worry where I walked, I asked my friend Wayne, well, how do you know when you've eaten enough to have built up protection? And in his sweet, slow drawl, he replied, well, when you start to itch out the other end of your eating system, you probably know that you've had enough. No, not for me. So instead, in the summertime, I've trained myself just not to touch anything green. I don't step off the trail without double checking the shapes of the leaves nearby, and yet, still, I will itch. Because when it's warm, everything in the woods will make you itch. There are mosquitoes, plenty of them, and there are chiggers. But I think the worst are the ticks. Now, ticks are everywhere. There are big ones, which are called dog ticks, and there are small ones, which are called deer ticks, but it's the itty-bitty ones that I think are the worst. They're called seed ticks. And seed ticks are as small and as light as dust. And you won't notice that you've stepped into a cluster, but they live in nests by the hundreds. And at some point, if you've trained yourself to pay attention, you'll glance at your arm or your leg and you'll see it swarming with minuscule gray dots. And you'll probably utter some not nice words, and then you'll have to grab a roll of duct tape and get to work. I love how many people are nodding. Like, you are my people. Yeah. Now, some folks around here call duct tape tick tape because we use it for ticks as much as for anything else. And you roll loops of it around your hand, and for any of you who've taken lint off of a jacket this way, it's the same idea. You just stick it to your skin over and over again, pulling off ticks by the dozen, 2 dozen, or 3 dozen. And it works way better than tweezers or whatever they're telling you to do on the internet nowadays. So our house is near a nice trail that meanders beside the Haw River. And it's not unusual to have acquaintances burst through our door, drop their pants, and yell for tape. The only effective way to clear somebody of ticks is to have them take off all of their clothes. Because you need to inspect the backs of the knees, the armpits, and all of the crevices. And ridding someone of ticks has been called Chatham County foreplay. I can't say how many relationships have been launched by a stumble into seed ticks, but I have gotten to see more of my friends' naked bodies with a roll of duct tape in my hands than I would have otherwise.
Makes me itch.
Yeah.
This is the first song that I wrote for this album because I heard Emma tell this story and I just thought it was really funny. This song is called Chatham County Foreplay. We started out with your pants around your knees. You began to shout about the ticks in your panties. There were ticks in your leg hair, there were ticks crawling everywhere. It wasn't fun for anyone. Till we grabbed the duct tape to unstick what was stuck, babe, and we realized something new'd begun. Call it Chatham County foreplay. Chatham County foreplay. If you're looking for more ways, try Chatham County foreplay. Hey. Well, 10 summers now, we've checked each other out, and I know every crack and crease from your north to your south. And some say I get bitchy when I feel a little itchy, but you say I'm fine, don't you? And some say Chatham summer is a bummer, but it's when I made you mine. Oh my, thanks to Chatham County foreplay. Chatham County foreplay. If you're looking to improve your day, try Chatham County foreplay. Quick story. Well, Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. But they ran into a tick nest. Now they've got a little daughter. They've got a little daughter. All thanks to Chatham County foreplay. Chatham County foreplay. If you're trying to get more play, try Chatham County foreplay. 'Cause we can take good licking and keep on ticking. Even when we're picking, we'll end up sticking together. No matter the sticky, ticky, icky weather, we've got. You can sing it. We've got Chatham County foreplay. Chatham County foreplay. Let's all give a big hip, hip hooray for Chatham County foreplay. You can try it today, or try to wait. Just might happen either way.
I am so susceptible. She's got me blushing.
Because they had a daughter.
Yeah. Didn't start that way. I firmly believe that everybody on the planet has a superpower, and this woman's superpower is being able to rhyme anything with anything else. I was going to read another story. So Bynum is built on the banks of the Haw River, and there's a dam up there that was built to power the cotton mill. And the Haw River is usually calm and placid, but where the water nears the edge of the dam, it picks up speed and it transforms into this menacing, muscular blur. And as it crashes over the dam and onto the rocks, the noise is deafening. And it drives me batty. to see my daughter standing anywhere near that dam. Because I can't imagine, I can't help but imagine her falling in and being swept away. But she is fearless. So she'll go and stand there and I'll pull her back and I can't help but wonder if she'll grow up to become like the local teenagers who will dare each other to walk across the width of the river along the edge of the dam. She has the personality to do it, I think. I would have been way too scared to do it as a teenager. And as a teenager, the other thing that I would have been too scared to do is to stand on the riverbank and howl for a ride out to Wolf's Island. Now, Wolf's Island is there in the middle of the river, just upstream from the dam. It's not far away. It's like 50 feet offshore. It's just far enough to be away. Wolf was a guy who practiced his own form of social distancing before it was a thing. And I don't know where he came from or what turned him into the type of guy who would claim an island in the middle of the Haw River as his personal kingdom, but he lived out there for a good while. And he wasn't exactly Robinson Crusoe. The island is teeny. It's about 30 feet wide. And being right offshore, you could practically stand on the riverbank and hit it with a beer bottle. But the way the rumor went is that if you stood on the shore and howled, Wolf would come over in his canoe to ferry you out to the island. So on a spring weekend, you might see a group of teenagers standing out there, squinting towards the island and egging one another on. You do it. No, you do it. You do it. And then some kid in cargo shorts would give a little, "Arr-oo." There'd be no response, and he'd try again, "Arr-oo." And still nothing would happen, and finally some girl with a toss of her hair and a roll of her eyes would go, "Oh!" And here comes Wolf, shirtless, wearing cut-off shorts, paddling a red canoe. He would slide the boat into place directly alongside the teenagers. They would clamber aboard, and that was the last anyone would ever see of those teenagers. Not really. I don't know what happened to the teenagers. I assume they went to the island and they drank beer and they listened to Wolf talk. Maybe he gave them advice. Maybe he was like an oracle for teenagers seeking answers. I don't know, because my mama taught me to never take a ride in a shirtless stranger's canoe. But one summer day when the air was hot and the river was slow, the water was barely trickling over the edge of the dam, some friends and I decided to swim to Wolf's Island just to take a peek. Some of us, not me, were hoping to meet him. And it was just a few lazy freestyle strokes from here to there. There were no signs of humans on shore. There was no sound of howling. And on the backside of the island, we found the mossy log and the frayed rope that served as his dock, but there was no canoe in sight. Wolf wasn't at home. So we climbed ashore and followed a path that led between the poison ivy vines. Wolf's camp was simple. He had a couple of mildewed tents and a busted air mattress, a can of wet cigarette butts. There were 5 tomato plants that grew growing in the sandy ground. They weren't the biggest tomato plants I'd seen that summer, but they weren't the smallest either. Now, it turns out that the local law enforcement just didn't want to deal with Wolf. The town police said that the island wasn't within town limits, so it wasn't their responsibility. And the county sheriff couldn't figure out how to get to the island, so they called the state park. And the state park sent a ranger who I hope stood on the riverbank and howled. I don't know.
This is called Wolf's Island. Jump from bank to bank, singing E-I-O-U. Over there lives and the hootie owl. His stretch of river is mighty clean. Some people say he's like a god of the teens. God of the teens. He's like a god of the teens. Man sakes alive, I wish I could go too. But my mama told me never take a ride in a shirtless stranger's canoe. If you knew my mama, you'd obey my mama. You'd obey my mama too. Teens stand on the bank and shout out, and here comes Wolf in his red canoe. They sling in their beers, paddle away without any fears. Man sakes alive, I wish I could go too. But my mama told me never take a ride in a shirtless stranger's canoe. If you knew my mama, you'd obey my mama. You'd obey my mama too. But I bet they're over there solving all their troubles while they down those cheap beer bubbles, talking grandiose about the earth and the unfair chain of the dollar's worth, or something. Man sakes alive, I wish I could see that teen guru. But my mama told me never take a ride in a shirtless stranger's canoe. And if you knew my mama, you'd obey my mama. You'd obey my mama too. Man sakes alive, I wish that I could shout, but my mama told me never take a ride in a shirtless stranger's canoe. And if you knew my mama, you'd say my mama, she's pretty smart too.
Thanks, Brittany. This is the last story, and you might get the sense, which is completely true, that this whole book is basically an extended love letter to Bynum. And I actually, when I first was thinking of titling this, I was going to call it Love Letters from a Small Town, and then I thought that was a little weird. But that's really all it is I'm completely in love with this place that I live, completely in love with the people that I got to meet. And I kind of wish that everybody got to live in Bynum, but not everybody can. And yet, one little thing that I include in this book is a trick that I've discovered that allows anybody to turn their town into a town like Bynum, which is just the trick of paying attention to the people around you. So this last story is one of my many love letters, but that's the theme of it. It's called Tiny Stitches. Smoking, I've never done it. Drinking puts me to sleep. And gambling, I just don't understand why anyone would try it. But living in Bynum comes with its vices, and I wouldn't skip them for the world. Because every few months a call goes out. Bring your money, bring your potluck, bring your bottles, meet at Carrie's house or Mimi's house or Marcelena's house because it's time for a ladies' gambling night. I bake a tray of brownies. I find $5 for the pot and I walk out the door. And as I'm leaving the house, my husband invariably asks, remind me how you play this game again? Oh, it's a card game. No, wait, I think it's a dice game? I'm pretty sure we play dice, and I don't know, we roll them a lot. I gotta say, we've been playing this same game for years. Actually, the women of Bynum have been playing this same game for decades. And the fact that I can't remember if I'm using cards or dice when I play should tell you exactly how closely I pay attention. But for the record, the game we play is called Bunko, and it's played with dice, and really only one person at each table needs to be paying attention, which leaves me free to turn my attention to the snacks table or the drinks table or to the story my neighbor is telling. Because there's not much you can do to affect your chance of winning or losing at Bunko, which is kind of a pity since I'm always hoping to lose. Because the prize for winning is half of the night's pot, which is usually about $50, and the honor of hosting the next get-together. So I'd rather lose my money than have to clean my house for a party. Now, I don't know if I'm the only one who's playing to lose, but nobody, I am sure, is here for the glory of winning. And we're not here to drink or throw dice either. In the manner of women everywhere, we're here to sew. We don't sew with the needle and thread, because this is not a quilting bee, but still we stitch. We're sewing together a town. And we assemble the scraps with dice and with time and with talking. And our tools are margaritas and mini cupcakes. And the women of Bynum know that our work is vital. Oh, your new roof looks great. Oh, hey, has anyone checked in on Leslie lately? Oh, that's 2 points for us. Oh, she got home from the hospital yesterday. She's got her sister staying with her for a few days. Does anybody know what that developer plans to do with the land on Bynum Beach? Are they going to take the bridge away? Hey, what number are we rolling for again? Well, they can't take our bridge. It's not theirs for the taking. We're stitching constantly. We sew when we play Bunko. We sew when we stop to pat a neighbor's dog, or when we roll down the car window to greet a morning walker. We sew when we comment on how tall a child is growing and when we notice a neighbor's garden. We sew when we offer up used furniture and when we ask for a ride to the doctor. And throughout this town, there is a network of tiny, tiny stitches everywhere you look. That's it. Thank you for coming. I know, whoa.